Hello, and welcome to the Full Circle Healing Podcast, where we merge modern cutting-edge science with traditional healing wisdom and everything in between to help you come full circle back to your original, natural state of health and well-being. I'm your host, Michael, and over the past 15 years, I've helped hundreds of thousands of people find the information, practices, tools, resources, and experts they needed to find their way back to optimal health. Our guest for this episode is Jane Hogan, the wellness engineer and the host of Wellness by Design podcast, who helps people release chronic pain using the mind, body, and breath so they can become empowered creators of their own health. In this inspiring conversation, you will learn how Jane was able to prove the doctors wrong and reverse her own rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis, the role of the nervous system in healing and reversing chronic pain, the most important piece of advice she can possibly share with anyone on a similar journey with chronic disease or chronic pain, and several practices she uses with her own clients to help shift their body into a state of healing. And there's a lot more. There was a ton of alignment here between the work Jane is doing and the direction my own work is heading. So I hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. And if you find this topic interesting, head over to rebelhealth.co/breathing to grab the Breathing for Nervous System Regulation ebook. Now let's get things underway. Hey Jane, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Hi, Michael. I am wonderful. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. It's a little hot, but everything's good. I'm still adjusting to summer in Europe. It's a little warmer than what I was experiencing in the States, but everything's good. We're going to talk about a really interesting topic today with you that I personally find really interesting. So before we get to that, I want to just learn, or I want them to learn. I want you to share a little bit about how you came to be doing the work that you do with chronic pain, with chronic illness, revolved around the nervous system, a lot of that type of work. That's not something somebody just randomly decides to do. So how did we get here?
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm the wellness engineer now. I used to just be just an ordinary engineer. So I have 30 years as a civil engineer, and I taught engineering out of college. And then I had a really stressful year. And then after that stressful year, or still in it really, I started getting all this random pain around my body. And it was crazy. In 3 months, I went from being healthy and strong to being barely able to walk, couldn't turn door handles, stuck in rooms, not sleeping because I was just so much pain and inflammation in my body. And I kind of knew that it must be to do with stress because I had had this extremely stressful year. My mother had died and and she was my best friend. So I had all the grief, but also I was dealing with her estate and everything. My parents were travelers and collectors and everything was still there. So it was a lot, and I have siblings. So anyway, I was really lucky that my family doctor, conventional doctor, suggested food. She said sometimes food can cause inflammation. So it's really rare to have a conventional practitioner suggest that. And so I started with food. She said gluten and dairy. I cut them out cold turkey, and I suddenly had, my pain wasn't gone, but it was dropped a lot. And Michael, it was like I had a sense of empowerment then. So I really felt sort of despair and not knowing what was going on or what I could do about it, because there was no diagnosis then, to now having some power. So I kind of started with food. I discovered functional medicine. I went on to study to be a functional medicine certified health coach. I was still working as an engineer, but I just wanted to learn more about it. I really was interested in the mind-body work, which was a component every single month. And I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune condition. But by the time I was diagnosed, I was kind of doing some of these lifestyle things and feeling better. So I never did take any medications. And it took me a while because I was kind of not knowing what I was doing. I was a lot of food stuff, developed some food fear. There's all that. I didn't really understand that connection between the nervous system and also like a lifetime. So going way back to childhood and stuff that I carried throughout my whole life, which was probably triggered with, siblings all together. And so eventually I did reverse, and I thought, you know what, this is my passion. I kind of had a bit of a download that said you were going to figure this out and you're going to teach other people. And so I thought, my passion is not with engineering anymore. And I just really want to help people understand. We're told that we have to go to others to fix ourselves, but really we have the power to create that healing environment in our body. And so that's where I am now. And I, teach, and I have courses and podcasts and all that, but it's my mission to really empower people by giving them the inspiration and the knowledge and the tools for that.
I'm not glad that happened to you, but I'm glad that happened to you.
I feel glad it happened to me.
So yeah, it's kind of like a double-edged situation, but I mean, it's, for anybody listening that doesn't know, my wife has been diagnosed with palindromal rheumatism, which is like a half rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis when they don't understand what's going on and it comes and goes, and lupus, which presents for her as joint pain predominantly. So we've been through 3 increasingly terrifying periods of time where she is in debilitating, excruciating, like full body pain. And that's one of the main reasons we moved overseas, was because she's an ER nurse and she was working during COVID, and that's when her last flare was. And if you really want to stress somebody's body out and put them into a flare if they have autoimmune conditions, sticking them in an emergency room, especially during a pandemic, is probably the way to do that. And so we knew we had to get her out of there to lower her stress levels and let her kind of recover. And she's now almost 3 years symptom free. So that's great.
That's wonderful.
She did use some medication to help her get there, but it was mostly stress reduction and lifestyle changes and dietary, and she went through the ringer with doctors with those conditions and diagnosis of being told this is a these are progressive conditions. Like this is the best it's going to be, basically, is, like that. This is as good as you're going to feel. These things will continue to get worse. There's no known cause of these problems. There's no solutions. Here's the gambit of medications that you can consider, from steroids and anti-inflammatories to, immune modulators and different kinds of more advanced drugs. And they're like, oh, and this one could make you go blind, and this one could do this, and this one could do this. And
side effects. I
was like, no. We need to get this figured out. And for her, I mean, it was just taking time off work and relaxing, and 70% of her pain went away. The day she found out she was going to get a break from work, 70% of her, she hadn't had any time off yet. Like, she worked the day before. But when she got her thing signed that said she was going to get to go on leave for 8 weeks or however long it was, the next day her pain was reduced by over half.
It's amazing, right? Because the nervous system is just like it's like a big exhale. And, we know now the power of that. And it's interesting what you said with the doctors. Like, I found that too. I was being told, it's going to get progressively worse. So adding to the stress was, I'm in a race against time. And it's just such the wrong message. Anyway, we can talk about
Yeah. And I was staying up all night to try to figure it out as fast as I could because of that. I was like reading books and oh man, I dove into everything full speed because I'm like, I don't have any time to figure this out. It's already started. It's already happened. Like, we have to reverse it yesterday. And what I didn't know then is that energy makes it worse.
Right.
Because then it's rubbing off on her and I'm panicked and everything. So I guess that would be the misconception in this. I was going to ask you, are there any big misconceptions when it comes to like a lot of different chronic pain conditions? And I think we just stumbled on one of the bigger ones, is that this is how it is now, and it's going to progressively get worse. and there's these drugs or these surgeries or these things you can do that, or injections that might be able to slow down how fast it progresses.
Yeah, that is a big misconception, because, and I'll just put this out there because this is something that made me go, our body is constantly recreating, right? We're a process, not a one thing, and that's it. We're constantly recreating. Cells are dying off every day, and new cells are reproducing, getting the messages from the previous cells, right? And so, what controls all of it is our brain and nervous system. And which creates cascade of chemicals and so on. And, we can also get a little esoteric if we want to do with energy. It's all connected. But the body is constantly recreating. So why can it not recreate in a healthy way? But we've got to send the message that this is a safe place. This is a safe place for our cells to recreate, to, function normally and not be in that constant, the fight, flight, fear, fawn, gotta be in protection mode, defense mode, right? We can't heal that way. So the thing we can do, the best thing we can do, moment by moment by moment, is keep coming back to, it's all good. I'm fine right now. Just keep coming back to that relaxation response, because that's how we heal.
Yeah. And thank you. And that's a practice, right? Like somebody out there who's kind of in it, because I remember when she was in it, when we were in it, when it was full on flare and the fear and the panic and all those things, I would hear stuff like that sometimes. And then I would get agitated and be like, that's really easy for you to say. And so, or it's easier said than done to do some of these practices. Yeah. They sound really simple. Like, just tell yourself that you are fine while your hands and your feet and your hips and your shoulders hurt. And so can you speak to that just a little bit around if somebody's really in it, where, like that starting point, or that it's a practice, just like anything else, like that's a mindfulness practice. And even if you're just learning to meditate or learning mindfulness and you're starting from scratch, you may hear some meditation teacher be like, oh, sit down and just observe your thoughts. And it's like, dude, my thoughts are like a circus on steroids. So like what? And so can you speak to that a little bit if somebody feels overwhelmed by the thought of that?
I have so much compassion for the person in that place. I understand it, because that's where I was. Like, just, are you kidding me? Tell me to relax. But knowing that we can only heal if we get there, then can we create like little teeny moments? And I tell you how I visualize this. I imagine that if I could create like just let me just sit here and just breathe and just notice my breath for, 3 minutes. I'm making like a little pearl of peace, a little pearl of peace. And then, maybe I can do that 3 times a day. So I'm getting like 3 little pearls, and then maybe I can do it a little bit longer. And so I would imagine that I was sort of filling out a pearl necklace for the day. And of course, a lot of times in the day it's just like, the worry, the noticing the pain, all that was there. And so it wasn't all day, but I was creating like little pearls. But I did, eventually make longer and longer pearls. I wouldn't say I even have a full pearl necklace all the time now. I have days lots of times during the day where, my thoughts worry and ruminate, but I catch myself faster now. And I think that's the real that's the habit, right? Is to have the awareness to catch yourself when you're falling into the fear thoughts or you're being triggered by something, and then come back to, this place of just notice my breath. That's the simplest thing. Or I'm okay in this moment. And actually, there's a lot of things right with me. Actually, if you're breathing, there's a lot more right with you than wrong with you. So focusing on what is going well. And this doesn't mean like always stuff down your feelings, because there's a lot going on when you do have pain, but it's when you set aside a time to kind of, where you're going to let your feelings out. And there are lots of different tools for doing that. I really like journaling. There's tapping. There's, other somatic practices. There's different things you can do to help release those feelings. But then you say, okay, that's done. And now I'm going to work on my filling out my pearls. And so that's how I saw it, Michael. And it really helped me to visualize it in that way. Okay, I'm just going to it's not committing to the whole day. And I understand it's not going to be perfect, but I'm going to start filling out this pearl necklace.
I like that analogy. And I like that you mentioned that it's not going to be perfect as an engineer. And I say this all the time. I run into so many engineers and ex-engineers, not just in like the functional medicine health side of things, but also as I'm going deeper into like the trauma side and the emotional healing and that type of work. Mm-hmm. At the professional trainings I've been in every cohort I've been in, there's been at least a few engineers or ex-engineers. So I find that really interesting because it's such a shift. Because you mentioned perfection, and in engineering, perfection and perfectionism is a really big deal. That's like a very precise way to work, and things are structured systems and are predictable, and this needs to work like this. And what you're talking about here is very different than that.
And I think, what I see all the time, and you probably see this too, with people with chronic pain, with chronic conditions, with even a lot of autoimmune and other conditions, that there's and I know you mentioned Gabor Mate, what he calls behavioral adaptations, right? So we had like this stress, some kind of stress when we were little. We create these behavioral adaptations, like people pleasing, like perfectionism, like fawning, and hypervigilance and hyperindependence. We develop these because in our brain, that's how we protect ourselves. And so actually people think it's their personalities, but it's not. Yeah. It's really behavioral adaptations. And so I see it over and over again. If people have those, it's not that every single person who's a perfectionist, ends up with a health condition, but there's parallels there a lot. And they've known about this for years. Government wrote about rheumatoid arthritis back in the 60s. They knew that there was, this fear and sort of trauma kind of stuff associated with the illness. But, still, they're not recognizing that. And I wasn't willing to wait for that. I wanted to do my own thing, experiment as one. So that's actually one way that engineering really helped me, was kind of seeing myself as an experiment. And what if I do this and what happens? In the beginning, I was doing like a lot of tracking and things like that. And I kind of, did have to kind of let that go a little bit. But also I kind of looked back to see, why did I even become an engineer? And part of it is my father was an engineer. My sister was an engineer. My father wanted me to do engineering. And so I was being a good girl. And so we see that a lot. Almost all the girls that were in my engineering class had fathers or brother or someone that was an engineer. So, I think about that a lot, that in a lot of professions, doctors probably as well, right? Their family puts a lot, and lawyers probably put a lot of pressure on them to, do this thing. And so we do it because we think, that's how we're going to boil it right down really simple. That's how we're going to get love. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of all for the wrong reasons and not really following our heart. I don't know what there's no regrets with me. Everything I did was absolutely perfect for where I am now. But I look back and I realize it was probably, trying to get some love there.
Yeah. And that's not something to be ashamed of. Like, that's connection with your parents and your caretakers and like your family as a child is like death if you don't have it. Like, it's the most important thing. So you'll do anything to have it. And Gabor talks about that a lot. And I also, I recently went through a really fascinating 6-month training with an incredible therapist and teacher named Francis Weller, who teaches about grief. And he talks about this as well, that our society and our culture have shifted from what he calls living cultures, which are cultures that still are intact from kind of disrupted living cultures, indigenous cultures and historical like living cultures, what he calls them, is that children that came into the village or into the community were loved or accepted because of who they were. And now you have to earn that by how you show up or how you perform or what you do or what your value is to some system or structure or thing, and how detrimental that can be. And you've mentioned the nervous system quite a bit. I think maybe we should just give people a little bit of why we're talking about that, because I think sometimes when I get riffing with somebody who knows a lot of nervous system stuff, we kind of jump a little ahead. And so we're talking about chronic pain. You had rheumatoid arthritis. I talked about rheumatism and lupus, and recovery was calming the nervous system. When we're talking about the nervous system, I heard you mention some words: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, these kind of things. What role does the nervous system play in developing chronic pain, in worsening or lessening chronic pain and the severity of the pain? And then maybe if you want, try to tie in what we're talking about, you had that stressful situation when your pain kicked in. You just lost your mother. You were having to deal with siblings. And when you're around family, one of my favorite spiritual teachers is Ram Dass. And he says, if you think you're enlightened, go spend a weekend with your family. But it triggers those same acceptance patterns or those same adjustments. So how do what we just talked about how we learn adaptive ways to be that kind of are harmful to us in order to get acceptance, how does that impact the nervous system in that soup, if at all? And then how does the nervous system relate to the pain? Is that too jumbled? Are you able to follow that?
I can pull that together. I love the idea of the soup, right?
Yeah.
The soup. I kind of think of the nervous system and kind of to come back to maybe an energy thing. So we talk about emotions, right? So, or thoughts create emotions, which create feeling in the body, and the nervous system is all tied in with this. And so when we have thoughts that create, let's call them negative emotions, we know that it feels different in our body, right? So it's a vibration. And so all of our cells are, I think of it like as a soup or marinade. They're like sitting in that vibration. And so if we are constantly in that vibration, they're constantly like, it's not safe here. And so we want to shift that around. I know we've already kind of talked about that. So we want to shift it to a vibration that's supportive. It's all good. So with the nervous system, and with pain in particular, and really, I guess, any chronic condition, that the condition, we probably had behaviors and lifestyle things happening that, triggered the cells to kind of break down. Maybe the immune system stopped working as well. The digestive system stopped working. The endocrine system, all of these systems are affected. And then it can result in your chronic condition. But then the chronic condition itself creates stress. We talked about, we're in a race against time. I mean, for me, you start Googling rheumatoid arthritis and it's not pretty, or,
So it's like a self-perpetuating loop then.
Yeah. And so then we create more fear. So we've got more fear for our future. And then that creates, the nervous system again going into fight or flight every time we think about it. So it's such a unfair kind of loop. But here's the thing. The only one who can make the shift in that nervous system is you. And I think, that is actually pretty empowering. So even seeing it in that light, I am the one, like no one else can make that change. We can teach people how to do it. And that's what you do and I do and lots of other wonderful people. We can teach people that, but the work is that they have to do it, but it's very empowering, I think, because we all know that it feels good to feel good, but how do we feel good when we're feeling bad? We have to draw on some tools. It does take effort and creating new habits, because if you think about it, all of our habits, our brain runs habits. That's what it does. It learns stuff and, makes programs and runs habits. So if we've had a habit of thinking that resulted in the nervous system being dysregulated, then we have to change the habit. So there are tools for that, but it does take effort. You have to focus your attention. And so I think about the whole hero's journey. And I kind of tie it in with that we can create healing hero habits. And they're very simple. But we have to, if we can do that, then we can regulate the nervous system. So it's simply a matter of habit, which is kind of also a little bit crazy, but it is possible to do. I'm proof of that. And so many, many other people are proof of that. Loads of people that I work with. So it's possible. And so I really hope that your listeners have hope that it's possible for them too.
Thank you for that. And yeah, the hope is such a big, like, believing that you can get better is, because I didn't have that at first, because you're right. I jumped onto Google and I was like, wow, this is really bad. Like, this is what our life is now. And all the plans go away and all the ideas of what your future is going to be goes away. And like, it doesn't have to go that way. But you're not going to see anything that says that, at least not at the top of the search, or not if you're on WebMD, or if there's more talk of that now. I mean, this was the first one of her flares was like 6 or 7 years ago.
Right.
There's a lot more people doing work around this now that are seeing positive results. And so it's word is spreading that it's possible. But when I first jumped into it, and I was already in the functional medicine world, and when I first jumped into it, it was like a black hole. Like, it was doom everywhere. And that doom then tells your nervous system that you're not safe, which then perpetuates the pain and the doom. So, and it's not that your nervous system is broken, right? Like, it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's responding to what inputs it's getting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just, I kind of think of it sometimes like a little bit like a computer. Like, the subconscious mind is just, there's nothing there, right? It's like, put the programs in, what goes in is what comes out. So if we want to change the output, because the subconscious mind is running the body, right, through the nervous system and so on. And so if we want to change that output, we have to change the input. And that can happen with repetition. Is kind of, that's how our brain works, right? It learns through repetition. Look at any athletes, look at learning to ride a bike or learning to drive a car. It was like practice. This is what we do. Like, you learn the tools, you practice the tools, you practice over and over again. And, now we can drive from A to B and don't even think about it sometimes. We don't even know how we got there because it's automatic. And so we can also create programs that can help, bring us back to regulation again. And so I think the beliefs are really powerful. Like, you can do this. You've learned many other things in your life. Look at what you've learned. You can learn this too. It can be taught. You can learn it, but you've got to do the practice.
Yeah, it's a skill and it's a practice, just like anything else. And so I've worked with some people more with, either they have anxiety or they have depression or they feel like disconnected, like not physical pain stuff as much, but I'll explain to them and they'll be like, oh, I can't do that. And I was like, you can play Beethoven on a piano. Like, everybody has some skill that like they can do, that they do really well, that I can't fathom doing, or whatever. It's like, you could do that. That's way harder than this. So it's just seeing yourself as the person who can do it. And people have said, like, what would you go back and tell yourself in that panic state to me before? And the first thing I would tell myself is that she can get better, like that it can happen. That was like the one thing that was really, really missing for us when we first dove into this world. I wouldn't go back and be like, tell her to take this or do this or don't eat this thing or like whatever. I would just, first of all, know that this can change, like this can go the other way. And I think that that's so powerful for people to hear. So you've mentioned, some practices and some tools and different kinds of things. I'd like to give people a taste of that before we go, of just a few things that they could try, whether they're in chronic pain. Because what's really cool about these practices is we're approaching this right now from a lens of chronic pain, because it's where your background is and what you went through and what you predominantly work with people to help. These practices are beneficial for pretty much any sort of physical, mental, or emotional challenge. So I just want to preface that if there's somebody out there listening right now who they don't have chronic pain, this stuff's good for you too. So what would you like to share?
I mean, we all go through stress in our life, right? So stress is kind of the underlying condition that, over time can create, I think, from what, I've done at this point over 300 interviews with experts and a lot of study myself. I think it's kind of the start of everything, of all, things going wrong in the body, but also emotional things, as you talked about, like, feeling anxiety and depression. It's all related. So, so I'm just going to share some tools with you today.
Sure.
I've got a lot of different tools, but one thing is that I find really powerful is journaling and to get things out, because part of the problem is that we hang on to stuff. We don't express our emotions, especially like the politeness, the people pleaser, perfectionism. Well, we're not going to express how we're feeling, right? Because we don't feel safe to do that. So I've got a practice that I call freedom talk journaling. And so I just set a timer, and for 20 minutes, I'm just going to let it rip. I'm going to write it all down. I'm going to curse and swear and say everything. I can say hate if I want to. I can just let it all out as if you're like a little kid having a tantrum. Whatever's bothering you about this particular situation, just write it all down, let it out. And for 20 minutes. And then when the timer goes, you take that piece of paper and you tear it up and you throw it out, burn it, whatever. It's not meant to be read again. So we want to have that feeling of safety, like we can fully and completely express ourselves because no one's going to see it. And I'm not even going to see it again. We don't want to see it again because it'll reinforce the negative feelings and thoughts. So we throw it out and then spend a few minutes, 5-10 minutes. You can set the timer again, kind of speaking kindly to yourself, like I'm a good person, because you've just let it all out. Like I'm a good and kind person. I did the best I could. They did the best they could, or just breathing. You could do tapping, anything that's just going to kind of calm you down again. And then it's done. And you do that whenever, something comes up that's bothering you, or memory that comes up. You can do this. And it's just to get it out, because, they say the issues are in the tissues, right? So we can repress, when we repress emotions, literally there's chemicals that get created in our body as a result of these emotions, and they have to be metabolized, so literally metabolized in our body. But if we don't get back to that calm space, then they kind of get stored, right? And so we want to metabolize them. And so this gives us an opportunity. So I call that freedom talk journaling, and I find it really powerful. Now, a lot of people say, well, I don't like to journal. Well, maybe that's when you're very resistant, maybe it's the very thing you need to do, right? And if you really, really don't like journaling, you can go in a private place and speak it, right? But it's often you're worried about being overheard. That's why I like the writing part. So releasing the emotions is a really great tool. So I love that one. And so another just basic breath work. And so what does that mean? Often people who are stressed are breathing dysfunctionally because, of course, rapid breathing, shallow breathing into the chest, those and quick breath, shallow, and often breathing through the mouth are associated with stress, because if we need to run or fight, we're going to be like that. And so we're not breathing in lower and longer breaths. And there's a ton of science behind this, Michael, that the longer slow breathing deeper into the belly and long exhales, especially exhales longer than the inhales, reduce chronic pain, calm the nervous system. There's just so much science. So, and it's simple, right? Because anyone can do it. It's a completely portable tool, and it's free. That's why I love it. So, but the thing that I found when people would say, take a, breath into the belly, I just couldn't. I didn't know how to do it. And so, what I found was a really great tool was to start with an exhale, and starting with an exhale and imagine like pulling, well, you actually do pull the belly button back towards the spine as you exhale. And then the breath has got somewhere to go low down. So then you can inhale, push the belly button out. And then exhale, pull the belly button back. And you notice I'm using my nose as well. And then inhale, pull the belly button, push the belly button out again. And just noticing your breath, noticing how it feels in your body, noticing the sound of it, noticing the air, coming through your nose. That alone is enough to make people kind of slow down a little bit. And there's other things, there's the box breathing where you go inhale up one side and hold it on another side and exhale down the other side and hold it across the bottom and repeat. That kind of imagery helps people as well. And sometimes words, just thinking, I'm at peace. I'm safe. So calming words like that can be helpful. And sometimes just counting, right? Especially if you're really stressed. I found like the counting, but then some people say counting makes me feel stressed. So you just need to kind of find something that works with you. But that starting with an exhale is really, for me, and I know when I say this to so many people, they're like, oh, thank you. Like I could never breathe into my belly. And when we breathe low like that, the parasympathetic, that rest and digest state of the nervous system gets activated when the lower lungs get filled up. So that's a really powerful, it's so simple, right? But so powerful. So don't underestimate the power of just breathing. And if you can do that, not just wait till you're really stressed, but try to make a practice of it, because we talked about a habit. Then you're teaching your body, okay, this is how I breathe, right? And you'll start to breathe more normally, like most of the time, in a slower and deeper kind of way. So that it's helpful. It's really helpful for people. So that's
a really good cue. That's a good cue. I've teach various forms of breath work, and I've been through a lot of breathing training, and I've never heard anybody cue anybody to start diaphragmatic breathing on an exhale.
Yeah, it works for me. And I remember reading a book by Dr. Andrew Weil years ago, and he was a real proponent of the 4-7-8 breathing. But he also said if people could just think of their breathing starting with an exhale, it would change everything. So I thought about that, and I wasn't ill when I read that book, but yeah, I think it's powerful to think of my breathing starts with an exhale.
I like that.
And then specifically for like pain relief, there's a couple of things. So we talked about the nervous system, and I kind of mentioned this with the breath work, saying I am safe. So whether you've got chronic pain or whether you've got another chronic condition that's worrying you, really, the worry that we have about it is thinking forward, right? We're thinking about the future and what it means. Oh, this means I'm not going to be able to walk. Am I going to have to sell my house? I'm going to be in a wheelchair. Whatever. We start really catastrophizing about, the future. And so if we can just kind of, we don't want to, if we do that, we're activating the nervous system again. And so what we want to do is send a message to the brain. Yeah, I have pain right now, or yeah, I have this condition, but actually in this moment, I'm fine. I'm not in any mortal danger, because that's the dysregulation of the nervous system. It thinks, the brain thinks we're in mortal danger for our, danger for our life. And so I found one of my students, when I would say I'm safe, she didn't really feel that, because she felt like her pain at any moment she could fall down. So she really didn't feel safe. But when I said, for her, I said, well, what about if you told your brain that you're not in mortal danger? And she said that changed everything for her, that she could notice the pain or think about the problem or whatever it is and say, I'm not in mortal danger right now in this moment. I'm not in mortal danger. So it's a moment by moment thing. And so I find that really helpful. And you can imagine breathing if it's a particular area that's giving you trouble. Our imagination is so great. We can imagine that our breath, our magical breath, we can take that magical breath and imagine breathing, like if you're, just say it was your shoulder, you can imagine breathing the breath up and down your arm and going through that area. And I like to kind of personify it. And you could do this even if it was, say, an organ that was giving you trouble. You could personify it like as if it's a small child or a pet that needs like loving attention, because that's what it needs. Our brain has deprioritized the area. That's why it's giving trouble. Like for whatever reason, it thinks, I'm not going to prioritize that. Often pain is a protection mechanism, right? So like I'll send some pain there and, that'll protect us. So what we want to do is tell the brain to prioritize it so we can focus our loving and compassionate attention on the area. It's like, I hear you. I hear you calling. It's like, what would you do with a child who was hurt? You would say, come here, my love. Everything's going to be okay. It's all right. I've got you now. It's all right. And then if they cried again, you would go do the same thing again. So I love this kindness and loving and compassion for the area and just breathing into it with like that love and compassion.
Beautiful.
And it might seem like, well, why would I want to do that? Because it's giving me trouble. Well, think of it again as like the little child. You wouldn't just push the child away and say, look, figure it out. Like, we wouldn't do that because we know it doesn't work. It doesn't work. So the love, compassion, and kindness for the area is really another great tool that I love.
Fantastic. Those are all super valuable. Thank you for sharing those tools. I think they're something that everybody can implement right away. And like I said before you started with those, that even if you're not in pain, these can, for the last one, if it's not an area of pain, you can find an area of tension in your body or someplace where something feels tight or uncomfortable, or this kind of gives me an issue. So all of those can be adjusted too, and all would be really helpful to do. And so there's a million more of them. And I'm sure when you work with people, you kind of help them figure out, the best kind of tools for them to use that kind of fit with them. And if somebody wants to find you and more about where you're putting out information, where they can find out more about your work, like where should they go?
Oh, thanks for asking, Michael. Well, my website is thewellnessengineer.com. I have a podcast, Wellness by Design, and I'm on YouTube and social media at Jane Hogan Health. And I got a little gift if your audience would like to
Sure.
to have it. It's an audio. I call it an audio bundle. It's 3 different audio files. One for the mind to kind of reprogram the mind through affirmations, and there's a breathwork meditation, and there's also there's a breathwork and there's a guided meditation. So they can go to thewellnessengineer.com/audio to download that.
Great. Yeah. And we'll put the link down below this video, wherever. And if it's a platform where you're listening where we can put links, there will be a link there. And thank you for that. That's really generous. And I recommend everybody to go grab it. So Jane, thank you so much. This was really fun. I enjoy conversations on this topic, and I'm really inspired by, how you took something that's really scary and really difficult. And I don't want to downplay that at all, because I've been in it. I've been in that initial wave of it. Like you mentioned, like, I'm going to lose my house. I'm going to be in a wheelchair. My brain's really good at catastrophizing things. So when I started reading right away, it was like, oh, this is really bad. And like, it went to a million dark places. So if anybody's out there in that, like, we get it. And I like that you acknowledged that, and that, the taking little steps, like taking little bits and little pearls and little breaks and little moments of peace that add up over time, that you're not going to do 100% of the work in 1 hour or in one day. And that it's really about changing the way that you're approaching life and the way that you're approaching this pain and this new way that your body's speaking to you. So I really appreciate that. And I recommend everybody go check out your work and your social media. So thank you so much for being here, for sharing this, for turning your, I don't want to call it a mishap, but turning your lemon into lemonade. Yeah. Pain to purpose. Like it's a true gift for everyone. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Michael. I love what you're doing. And we had a great conversation. You asked wonderful questions. And I just really enjoyed having this opportunity. It's all about spreading hope and helping people understand that they have the power to create the healing in their body.
Absolutely. Thank you.